What if I told you that the most fractured minds, the ones shattered by trauma into dozens of different pieces, could be made whole again? Not over years of therapy, but in seconds. Today, we are diving into a story that starts with a single, completely impossible touch and ends up rewriting the very rules of what it means to be human. And this is the moment where everything just changes. That's not a metaphor, by the way. It's a brand new kind of perception. The birth of a new type of human. And really, it's the start of a revolution in what we even think healing is. Okay, so let's set the scene here. Our whole story kicks off in the pretty ordinary office of a consciousness researcher. And little does she know, her entire field of study is about to be completely flipped on its head. So picture this. On one side of the desk, you've got Dr. Amara Osei, and on the other, there's Lynn Chen, a patient whose mind has been so fractured by trauma that it's split into 17 different identities. But for Amara, this isn't just some psychological concept. She can actually see the fractures, like literally see them, like cracks in a sheet of glass. So on an impulse she really can't explain, Amara just reaches out and touches Lynn's shoulder. And then she just watches, completely stunned, as in just 17 seconds, those 17 different identities gently, seamlessly merge back into one whole mind. Now, this shouldn't be possible at all, but it just happened. So, what do you do? What do you do when you find out you can do the impossible? Well, if you're a scientist like Amara, you start experimenting. You have to. She had to know, was she some kind of one-off miracle, or was this something bigger? So Amara starts trying to map out the rules of this strange new reality. First discovery, okay, it's real, and she can do it again. But it takes a massive toll on her, physically and mentally. It's exhausting. And there are some hard limits. It only works if the other person actually consents to it. And then, in this weird, kind of cruel twist, she figures out she's completely unable to use this ability on herself. Amara knows this is way bigger than just her. So she goes to the top mind in the field, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. And after weeks of just, rigorous testing, Tanaka confirms it. This isn't just some fluke. It's a new, genuine type of human consciousness. And it needs a name. So she calls it healer. Tanaka's institute puts out this global announcement, basically asking, hey, does this sound like you? Has anyone else experienced this? And the response is just staggering. I mean, within 6 hours, their servers completely crash from the traffic. And in just 6 months, they identify over 50,000 healers. They were out there the whole time, everywhere, basically just hiding in plain sight. Okay, so now you've got tens of thousands of healers suddenly emerging all over the globe. A whole new science starts to form. Researchers and healers start working together to figure out, what are the different forms this ability can take? And maybe more importantly, what are its limits? The first type they nailed down is the structure healer. This is what Amara is. So think of consciousness like a building, right? These healers can see the cracks in the foundation, the broken walls, the faulty wiring that trauma leaves behind, and they can go in and repair that fundamental structure. But then, pretty soon, a whole other type comes to light, the pattern healer. They don't see buildings. For them, it's more like they hear music. They see consciousness as this symphony of patterns and rhythms, and they can spot a discordant note, like an addiction loop or a compulsive thought, and help a person find a new, healthier melody to live by. But here's what makes this all so compelling and, so real. The limitations. This isn't some magic wand. Healers can't force help on the unwilling. They can't fix every single wound. Some damage just runs too deep. And the work is draining. Burnout is a very real risk. But that one cruel irony always remains. They cannot heal themselves. So what does a world with healers actually look like day to day? Well, their existence creates these incredible new ways to relieve suffering, for sure, but it also opens up this total Pandora's box of really complex, really messy new ethical problems. And this is how they discover another new consciousness type, the pain bearers. Think of them as emotional sponges. They can't help it. It's a reflex. They just absorb the suffering of people around them. Now, this provides incredible relief for others, but that toxic buildup of absorbed pain, it slowly destroys the bearer. But this tragic discovery leads to a brilliant new kind of partnership. A pain bearer can take on someone's agony, right? Acting as a buffer. Then, a healer steps in and repairs the damage done to the bearer. It creates this sustainable cycle, a system for managing suffering, a way to actually transform pain without anyone having to be destroyed in the process. But this new power forces this huge ethical debate. I mean, what happens when a healer saves an unconscious man's life, but when the man wakes up, he's furious and reveals he never wanted to be healed? This event kicks off what becomes known as the consent crisis. On one side, you have the autonomists, who argue that healing without consent is a violation. On the other, the interventionists, who believe saving a life has to come first. So how do you solve that? Well, the world eventually settles on this very fragile compromise. It's called the emergency healing doctrine. It's basically a framework that tries to balance two sacred values: our right to choose what happens to our own minds and the very human impulse to save a life. It sets a really high bar for intervention, making consent the absolute default, while still allowing for life-saving action in the most extreme cases. And here's where things get really deep. After decades of practice, the whole understanding of what healers were actually doing started to shift in this really profound way. It wasn't just about fixing what was broken anymore. It was about something much, much bigger. See, at first, everyone saw healing as simple repair work, right? The goal was just to fix the damage, get someone back to how they were before. The whole focus was on the past. But over time, this deeper understanding began to emerge. Healing wasn't just repair, it was transformation. The key question changed from what's broken here to what's trying to emerge here. The goal wasn't to fix the past anymore. It was to help midwife a new future into existence. And this brings us to the ultimate insight, which comes from Dr. Amara Ose herself. After a whole lifetime of doing this work, she realized what she was doing. It wasn't some strange energy. It wasn't a psychic trick. At its most fundamental level, she said, healing is an act of, well, she called it ontological love. It's just one consciousness, simply and profoundly supporting another's existence and its journey toward becoming whole. So, the discovery of healers completely rewrote the rulebook on what's possible. It proved that consciousness isn't just some passive observer sitting in our skulls, but it's an active force, a force that can actually mend and transform itself. And that leaves us with one last, pretty tantalizing question to think about. If consciousness can learn to heal, what else can it become?